Welcome to the 30th episode of the week that was, TIOL's weekly news roundup. News highlights of this week include the efforts by Indian agencies and banks to chase their money behind industrialist Vijay Mallya. There is some good news for home buyers and offshore fund houses, besides Flipkart's legal success.
We also bring you news on government action against increasing loan defaults, besides snippets on tax news, notifications and developments from the courts. But first, let's look into the news which has taken WhatsApp by storm.
Even as WhatsApp is rife with Mallya's art of leaving Indian shores, the Enforcement Directorate, the Central Bureau of Investigation, Income Tax Department, Service Tax Department and the Indian public sector banks are planning to shorten the noose around Mallya and devising strategies to bring him back. Will Mallya be able to step out before the news tightens? Mallya had a date with the Enforcement Directorate on March 18th and a date in the Supreme Court on March 30th. But Mallya informed he won't be here until April. While banks have dragged Mallya into the Debt Recovery Tribunal, the Enforcement Directorate is investigating loan fraud and charges of money laundering against Mallya. And the Central Bureau of Investigation is probing Mallya's properties and investments overseas as part of its investigation into charges of diversion of funds raised from banks for Kingfisher Airlines. If Mallya is not here by April, after all, he's not known for his integrity. What are the options available to these agencies? The CBI may initiate the process to obtain information through a letters rogatory process, which is a formal communication sent by a court in which the action is pending to a foreign court requesting Mallya's testimony to the questions sent along with the request. The letters rogatory process would be crucial in obtaining a red corner notice issued by Interpol. The CBI is also probing whether banks were under the influence of any political pressure to lend to Kingfisher Airlines even though it was ill-advised. The Enforcement Directorate is seeking details of the probe conducted by the Income Tax and Service Tax Departments and the Special Frauds Investigation Office against Kingfisher Airlines. It may also initiate legal action against Mallya to revoke his Indian passport. There is a new ray of hope for Indian home buyers.
Yes, after a long agonizing wait of many years, home buyers and realtors can finally heave a sigh of relief. The crucial Real Estate Bill 2013 was passed by the Lok Sabha after the Rajya Sabha gave it the green signal. The new legislation will regulate transactions between buyers and promoters of residential real estate projects. The realtors body NAREDCO welcomed this as a positive development but expressed concern that the statute still fails to fix accountability of financial institutions and government agencies, which have significant role to play in project implementation. Under the new law, all developers would have to park 70% of the funds received for a project from buyers into an escrow account, which would tackle the issue of projects being left incomplete on account of funds shortage. The new legislation is also expected to bring relief to the Competition Commission of India, which is presently flooded with real estate complaints in the absence of any specialized regulatory authority. The new law will establish state-level regulatory authorities called Real Estate Regulatory Authorities and appellate tribunals. Black money has taken the garb of agriculture.
Who says farmers cannot be crorpatis? The issue of tax evasion under the pretext of agricultural income has echoed within the walls of Parliament. Political parties, including the Samajwadi Party, Bahujan Samajwadi Party and JDU, have demanded an immediate probe into this issue of domestic black money being channeled into the agricultural sector. The Modi government has initiated the investigation but clarified that the probe may reveal the names of several top-notch political personalities which should not be equated with political victimization. The opposition has demanded that the names should be revealed at the earliest. India has liberalized its tax framework to attract offshore fund managers to India.
The CBDT has announced new rules to attract offshore and fund management activity to India. To facilitate the location of fund managers in India, fund houses owned by a single institutional entity shall be exempted under the liberalized law tax framework. The CBDT has issued the operation rules governing Section 9A of the Income Tax Act, which provides for the special taxation regime. The harsh conditions imposed by Section 9A are now relaxed. The CBDT has also introduced an optional pre-approval mechanism which will work like an advance ruling allowing fund managers to get clarity on tax liability before starting operations. Is there another judiciary executive face-off in the making?
After the recent episode with the National Judicial Appointments Commission, the two titans are again gearing up for a clash. This time, the executive and the judiciary are locking horns over the establishment of the National Court of Appeal with regional benches in major cities like Mumbai, Chennai and Calcutta. Recently, the Supreme Court, while hearing a public interest litigation demanding the creation of a National Court of Appeal, observed that it should restrain itself only to matters of constitutional and national importance as opposed to every single mundane matter landing up before it. The bench comprising Chief Justice of India T.S. Thakur and Justice U. Lalit observed that India needs a radical exercise to curb the staggering number of 63,000 cases reaching up to the Supreme Court every year. On the other hand, the Modi government is vehemently opposing this proposal. As per one statistic, 90% of the cases filed before the Supreme Court originate from northern India, which shows that the vast demography of India requires the extension of the highest level of justice for litigants residing in far-flung areas. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has asked the Attorney General to frame the questions for reference before the next hearing scheduled on April 4, 2016. Income tax assessments are private documents and the Income Tax Department is bound by principles of privacy.
Would the production of individual income tax assessments constitute a violation of their privacy when produced before a court, when these individuals are not the parties before it? This was the government's argument in the Supreme Court, which had directed the centre to produce the income tax assessment details of kith and kin of former Chief Justice of India, K.G. Balakrishnan, during his tenure as an apex court judge. The bench was hearing a PIL filed by NGO Common Cause, which has sought a CBI probe into the alleged amassing of wealth by the kith and kin of Justice Balakrishnan during his tenure as an apex court judge and chairperson of the NHRC. The Supreme Court, however, insisted on production of all records of tax assessment orders from the IT department along with the appeals filed by the relatives of the former judge against the tax demands raised against them. However, as requested, the so records could be produced in a sealed cover for the perusal of the court. The next hearing is fixed in July.
Flipkart has won its legal case in Uttar Pradesh too, with a tax officer being held accountable for his actions on behalf of the tax department.
The Allahabad High Court has ruled in favor of Flipkart in its case against the tax authorities in Uttar Pradesh. The State Commercial Tax Department had served a notice to Flipkart for payment of VAT dues, which was served at the company's earlier place of business, even though Flipkart had duly applied for a change in its place of business as per its VAT registration form. However, without informing the company that its application for change of address was rejected, the tax authorities passed the assessment and attachment orders without any notice to the company. Flipkart's bank accounts were attached and the tax department withdrew nearly Rs 50 crore from the account. The High Court observed that business houses would find it difficult to function if government department functioned in such a cavalier fashion. The High Court also ordered the tax officer to pay rupees 2 lakh as cost to Flipkart.
The government's declaration that spectrum allocation is not a sale of intangible goods but a service may have adverse consequences for telecoms.
Following the rollback of tax on withdrawals from the EPFO, telecom companies are now seeking withdrawals of the proposed service tax on spectrum allocation by the government, which could lead to a tax burden of Rs 77,000 crore and naturally higher tariffs. During the budget speech, the finance minister had declared that assignment of the right to use radio frequency spectrum and its subsequent transfer was not a sale of intangible goods but a service liable for levy of service tax. The government also proposed to defer the SENVET credit of tax on such assignment over the duration of the license period, which would further add to the burden of the industry, taking the tax component to nearly 70% of the service cost. TIOL editors were part of the convocation held by the Indian Law Institute.
The Indian Law Institute held its fourth convocation function on Tuesday, March 15, 2016 at the prestigious main hall of Vigyan Bhavan, New Delhi. The event was presided by the Chief Justice of India, Mr. T.S. Thakur, who is also the President of the Institute. The chief guest of the event was the Union Law Minister, Mr. Sadanand Gowda. It was a proud moment for TIOL too, when two of its editorial members, Mr. Sudipto Banerjee and Ms. Sonia Prasad, received their LL.M. degrees at the convocation. Mr. Sudipto Banerjee was also awarded a Certificate of Merit by the Chief Justice for his exemplary performance in the LL.M. course. On this note, we conclude this bulletin of the week that was. Thank you for watching.
You may write us on editor@tiol.in. Have a wonderful weekend ahead.